I know that many of you have conversations with people where you wonder how do these people you talk to go through their day having no idea what it is they really believe. For example, I can remember people that were going to vote for Obama, who did vote for Obama. And then years later, you ask them, okay, you remember all the reasons you voted for him. How many of those things did he follow through with? I don't know, they'll answer. Okay, well, how many of the things did you say that you didn't like about George Bush has Barack Obama either extended or added more to in the last 6 or 7 years now? I don't know. Okay, well, how many things has Barack Obama done that you would classify as classically Democrat, in line with your core Democrat values? And where has he shown himself to be a hardcore right-wing conservative? I don't know, they'll say. And you look at these people, and you say, now, wait a second. So you don't even know what the guy's done. And the things that you said you voted for, you don't know if he's done those or done things that would be in opposition to your beliefs. So who are you going to vote for next time? And the answer would be, if you gave them a choice between a Republican and a Democrat, the answer is going to be a Democrat. They don't know why the guy they voted for did or didn't do what he did or didn't do. They have no idea what his track record is or what he really believes, or all they know is that when they go into the voting booth, they're going to pull a D, not the R. That's for sure. No way would they vote for Mitt Romney, they'll tell you, and no way would they vote for Jeb Bush, whoever the choice is going to be. For Republicans, but man, there's no possible way they could vote for a Republican. Because although they can't tell you everything about Barack Obama, they know he hasn't done what a Republican would have done. And they're pretty confident of that. But if you ask them to explain it, they don't have any idea, really. Now, I know that some of y'all that are Republicans heard me say that. You're like, yeah. Okay, hold on, Republican. I'm getting to you in a moment. I know that there's some Democrats out there that are going, that's not fair, man, because I can tell you lots of things Barack Obama's done. All right? Some of you probably could. I'd be very happy to have you on as a guest on my channel, though, to talk about it. That's a side note. But now to Republicans. When George Bush was elected president, I told my in-laws the second time he was elected, I said, if you vote for him again, when George Bush is gone, when his term is up, the person that takes his place will be, you will say, the worst president the country's ever had. The lurching to what people perceive as the left is going to be so hard and so extreme, you will pray for Bill Clinton. You will actually say Bill Clinton will be better than the president that comes next. Oh, and they laughed and they laughed and they laughed. And I asked them, I said, well, if you think it's funny, let me ask you this. Can you name for me the things that George Bush has done which make him a conservative or a Republican? Now, in the first term, they could rattle some things off. Not many, but they could cobble together some sort of argument. In the second term, all the Republicans I know that voted for George Bush had a much more difficult time explaining how George Bush was a conservative or would even fit the kind of quasi-classic definition of Republican. They just couldn't figure out how to explain away, all of the magic of the exploding budget. That alone, I can remember talking with folks about the budget and listening to them try to explain how, well, on everything else, he's really conservative, but I'll admit the trillions and trillions of more debt, I'm not for that. That's true. But other than that, anyway, the point I'm getting at is you could sit down and go over Bush or Obama or any of these guys, and people that vote for them, they generally have, well, no, not, I'd say not generally, they don't have any, people, look, you sit down and ask somebody why they're voting for this guy, and whatever answers they give, when you point out to them the facts of what's really going on, or what the truth is about the record of the person they're voting for, whatever. The last bastion of the person who has no idea what they're talking about is well, at least he's not the other guy. But I must tell you that when I talk with Democrats or I talk with Republicans, interestingly enough, that's the comment they both make at the end of our discussions. Democrats and Republicans both make the exact same arguments. At least he's not the other guy. In fact, ironically, he is the other guy. Now, you may wonder how the folks around you got to be the way that they are. How did the folks around you get so dumb and so blind, not to which party is the best party, but having the ability to critically think their way out of a paper bag? How did it happen? Well, mostly it's a lot of things. It's the crappy food. It's the constant blasting of the inane, narcissistic media telling you that you're important, and selfies people care about on your Facebook page, and that you need to. By the way, this is a true story. You need to DVR up to 5, 10 shows at once now. Some of these things have the capability to do. Just in case you miss, while you're watching one, you miss the other 9. And you don't get a chance to see them as they're run repeatedly over and over again. But the people around you are generally dumbed down because they are bathed in the nonsense of the mainstream culture and the mainstream media. And part of the problem is what they call the news ain't news. In fact, as you'll see here in a moment, at CNN, it's the opposite of news. This is CNN, top of the fold article, have Republicans already won the Senate? Now, at face value, it seems like a pretty inane article. Republicans won the Senate, Dems see it slipping away. Some Dems see it slipping away. 4 weeks away from the midterm elections, even some Democratic operatives struggle to imagine a scenario in which they can retain control of the U.S. Senate. And then it says full story. Okay, now remember, it's a story. There's some story coming up. Some sort of news story. Koch's step into surprise tight race. GOP challenger leads in Alaska. Opinion GOP won't fool women. Senator replaces campaign manager. So, this on its face seems like a boring article about politics and some sort of political discussion. But let's break this down a little bit. Let's start off with the headline. Have Republicans already won the Senate? Now, don't know how many of you know this, and I'm not being sarcastic. A question is not the same thing as a declarative statement as a headline. When the question is asked, have Republicans already won the Senate? That's a leading question, number one. Number two, it's a tease to get you to start thinking. And I don't mean thinking, I mean questioning and asking yourself something. In the same way that those commercials at the end of them, they say, what's in your wallet? They want you, before you do anything else, consider, what's in my wallet? And think about it. It literally, and I'm not joking about this, it freezes your brain for a moment. It's stopping you from looking at something and trying to ascertain, is what they told me factually correct? And instead, the question is allowing you to be a part of the process. And by the way, they didn't say Republicans already won. You came to that conclusion yourself. Or maybe you didn't. But in either case, it's not a headline. That's not an item of news. It's a question leading and asking for an opinion from you. Subtext. Some Dems see it slipping away. Well, some Dems? Well, let's see. Out of hundreds of Democrats, does some mean one? Does it mean 49%? What does it mean? And some is a meaningless word. It tells you nothing. Some do, some don't. So what? Dems see it slipping away. Well, it meaning the election, I suspect, or the control of the Senate. But slipping away, again, that term is an editorial term. Slipping away is a subjective, non-defined term. Continuing on. 4 weeks away from the midterm elections, Even some I already got some other stuff covered I didn't mean to cover yet. Even some Democratic operatives struggle to imagine a scenario in which they retain control of the U.S. Senate. All right. The word even is another term which begs you to think, as if to say it's a surprise that some Democrat operatives would or would not think something. The actual, if this was a simple news headline, not asking for you to take an opinion or form an opinion, the word even would not be used. 4 weeks away then from the midterm elections, some Democratic operatives struggle. Oh, I need to correct something here. It's not Democratic, it's Democrat. Dear CNN, learn the correct use of the word. 4 weeks away from the midterm elections then, some Democrat operatives. Now, the word operative, it's a pejorative term to many people. And I don't mean to many in the vague sense. I mean that's a word chosen. You could simply say some Democrats. You could make Democrat poor. The word operatives is subjective. Doesn't tell you anything. It asks you to form an opinion. Take a side. Some Democrats struggle to imagine a scenario. Now, struggling to imagine, also vague and subjective, not defined. Some Democrats, and then a scenario in which they retain control of the U.S. Senate. Moving on. Kochs step into surprise tight race. Well, this is where you got to put on your thinking cap. How is it a surprise, and to whom is it a surprise? More opinion. It's an editorial decision by the writer of that headline. Kochs step into tight race. Well, maybe the race is tight, maybe not. You need a little bit more definition. In fact, if you take away surprise tight, now you see Kochs step into race. Well, maybe that's newsworthy or maybe it's not. Now, what makes it newsworthy, according to the writer, are the modifiers surprise and tight. Again, opinion. GOP challenger leads in Alaska. Now, by the way, that may or may not be accurate, but that's a statement of fact. GOP challenger leads in Alaska. There may be a Republican challenger in a race in Alaska, and he may lead. And that could be factually correct. Next, they state opinion. GOP won't fool women. Now, this one's interesting. The GOP won't fool women. This is extremely leading. It assumes that the Republicans would attempt to, or that the conventional wisdom is that, or that they usually do, or part of what they're... Now, by the way, some of you are saying they do try to, fool people. That's fine. But suggesting they won't fool women, again, fooling is another subjective term. And it leads the reader to assume that Republicans are expected to attempt to fool women, which they may or may not do. Finally, senator replaces a campaign manager, and that's fairly innocuous. That's just a factual statement. One more thing. The photo they use for these Republicans, it's got this guy on the left, this guy right here, and the grumpy down faces. A lot has been said in the past about images used in these articles that I won't go over here. So what you're left with is a headline that's not a headline, Democrats seeing something, and the Kochs stepping into a race. Now look, now think about this for a moment. I want you now to look at what you're seeing here, and I want you to feel something different. I really do. I want you to notice something. Let's read this differently. Democrats see it. Well, what was the it they see? They see their chances of losing in the Republic. They see a chance that they'll lose the Senate. Well, that's really no different than you could say that with any election cycle, any year, someone somewhere is going to say they think they're going to win or they think they're going to lose. But let's run with this. Democrats believe they may lose the Senate. 4 weeks away from the midterm elections, some Democrats can see a scenario in which they lose. Well, you know, I got to reword that. Some Democrats see a scenario in which they lose control of the Senate, because the language earlier was that they struggle to find the way that they see that happening. So some Democrats see a scenario in which they lose control of the U.S. Senate. The Kochs step into a race. A GOP challenger leads in Alaska. And the GOP, and that whole thing about not misleading women, that's National Enquirer tabloid stuff right there. That doesn't, you can't use that. That's an opinion piece used to sway an opinion or to mold you into believing Republicans are or are not the type of people that would try to mislead women. So what you're left with is something fairly, kind of bland. Some Democrats think they might lose the Senate. The Kochs step into a race. A GOP challenger is leading in Alaska, and a senator replaces a campaign manager. Now, here's what I want you to do. Look at this. I know I've gone long here, but I want you to look at this for a moment and forget for a second whether or not you agree with all of my changes here and whether or not you think I'm exactly right. Look at the screen. Now, think how you feel looking at this. Now watch what happens when I remove all of the white I've added to it. Now check it out. Have Republicans already won the Senate? Some Dems see it slipping away. Operatives struggling to imagine. Koch's surprise tight race. All of this. Judge your emotions right now. Judge your emotions. Okay, now look. If I go back and I add the white, don't you feel differently now? Don't you feel different? I'm not joking about this. Don't you feel different now? Well, let's do that. Now how do you feel? Have Republicans already won? 4 weeks away, Democrats are struggling to imagine scenarios. GOP fooling women. Koch's surprise tight race. Everything I've shown you here, it takes a level of nuance, and you got to start using your brain when you look at these headlines. And this is the kind of stuff they don't teach in school. They may not have taught in school even when I was a kid, to the degree that I remember they did. But you're going to have to understand two things. One, for you to read between the lines, you got to start removing words and removing phrases and ask yourself, is what you've seen noteworthy without the emotional charged modifying words? And number two, you have to also understand why the people around you don't know what they're talking about. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't know why they believe what they believe, because every day, all day, hundreds if not thousands of times a day, they're exposed to questions in the place of headlines to make people think, and it makes people think, man, I'm involved in this. When in fact, you ought to be told the news. Now, I didn't say that you have to believe the news. The news ought to be told to you. You should decide based on the facts. But everyone around you is led to believe that these questions as headlines and these emotional charged words, that something, they're led to believe they're learning something when all they're being told and taught is through what is not even subliminal messaging. They're being taught what to think and molded into what to believe, and they have no idea why. You step back and look at it, and you cover up all the modifying words. It really, and I'm going to leave you with this, it really should be a shock to you how different you feel with what you see on the screen now versus the original. Thanks for watching. I hope you didn't mind me going long, and I'll see you next video. I know lots of y'all have questions you'd like to have me answer, and you don't want to leave a message here on YouTube. That's fine, but you still need your question answered. So I've come up with a neat way to do this. On the screen right now is a phone number, 641-715-3900. Below it is an extension, 516-387. If you call that phone number and dial that extension when you get there, you can leave a recorded message that I'll get, and all you got to do is leave your question or your comment, and I'll try to reply to your question or your comment in an upcoming video. Now, you don't need to leave any personal information, don't need phone numbers, don't need emails, and this is not a voice message box for personal stuff, but it's for questions and comments specifically about the Day Trade Show, and I want your questions. Your questions can be about money, or they can be about family, or health, or all the stuff that I talk about right here on YouTube. So if you've got a question and you want me to answer it in an upcoming video, call 641-715-3900 and use the extension on the screen, 516-387, that is 516-387, and if your question's good enough, and if it makes me think hard enough, I'll get to it as quickly as I can in an upcoming video. Thank you for watching, take care, and send me those questions. I cannot wait.